What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Brave and Faithful podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Radian Dionisio. And this evening, I have an Air Force veteran. He's also the director of IT for Legrity Media. I have Daniel Faust. What's going on, Daniel? How you doing?
Yeah, thank you for letting me join this podcast.
Awesome, man. Before we get started into talking about what you're doing now and with Legrity Media, can you just share with our audience a little bit about your service in the Air Force, what you did and how long you served for?
Yeah, I've been in for 21 years. I'm still a reservist. I'm doing that during the day, and then during the night, I'm doing Legrity Media. So it's very interesting to say the least. I did 12 years of active duty, been about 9 years as a reservist. This was my first year doing a full-time reserve job out here in Delaware.
Okay, so 21 years. It's a long time. How much more do you plan on going or till you hit retirement?
Once we have enough veterans and first responders under Legrity Media and we have enough content to keep me busy at a full-time basis, then I just basically retire. So if this thing goes viral, it could be a couple days, it could be a couple months, it could be a couple years. I mean, it just depends. I mean, we're actively marketing for those military veterans and first responders to get their own content out there at the next level. So once we get enough of those people, then I pretty much go from part-time to full-time.
Okay. So yeah, before we talk about again Legrity Media, 21 years is a long time in service. What are some of your biggest takeaway from serving the Air Force?
I'd say my biggest takeaway is learning how to serve and to adjust because I've worked with all DoD branches, excluding the Space Force, because that's brand new. But I've worked with all the other branches and learning how to adjust to their personality style and their values, and learning how to go with the flow with things, and sometimes just getting thrown into chaos and then having to create from chaos to order. So I think that really helped me to get into entrepreneurialism because we already were thrown into chaos. And I've done a bunch of different AFSCs or rates or MOSs, depending on which branch is listening. But I've done 7 AFSCs. So I've had a lot of breadth of experience from like maintenance to mental health and now doing education and training. So it's really helped me become entrepreneurial because you put on a hat and then you put on another hat and you put on another hat and you're like wearing like 8 hats and you just spin the brim and you switch. So that's been really helpful for me in the 21 years of service.
Yeah, I can't speak for all service, but it seems like most of us, right? When you're in the military, you wear many different hats. It doesn't matter what your primary is. There's always another hat that you have to wear, and other responsibilities that you have to bear, especially as a leader, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I've been leading in all different types. I've either been doing just management leading or actually leading troops. So I've been in both sides of the fence.
Right. So you mentioned so you were active duty, and then how long have you been in the reserve?
Since 2012.
Okay. And did you have like a break in between that, or like did you transition straight to the reserves? How was that?
It was a very interesting story. So I cross-trained from basically IT to mental health, and that was my trek to go reserve in that regard. I mean, I really wanted to help people in a positive way, and it was wrestling between chaplain assistant and mental health, and I was not a good chaplain assistant, so I never cross-trained there. So mental health was the track I went, and it was one of those things, you get your wife to give you advice and you're like, no, I'm not going to listen. Oh, I should have listened. That was the worst 2 years of my military career, and that was the last 2 years of my active duty career. So I basically couldn't hack it being a mental health tech. So I went to deploy and they said, hey, we want you to do X and Y. I'm like, I'll try. And then they say, you don't get it. And I said, well, I didn't get it for a long time. And you guys kept pushing me to go. So when I got back home from that deployment, they're like, hey, you can either go back to comm or you can leave the service. So I tried to get back to comm. That was my prior career field, IT and everything else. But
Mm.
at the time, they couldn't get me to go back because of a regulation. So long story short, I had to transition to the reserve because active duty is like, hey, you either do mental health or you're out. So, and I'm like, all right. fine. So I was originally just gonna get totally out of the service, and a recruiter lived next door to me. And I told him the situation. He's like, no, that's total BS. That shouldn't have happened to you. Just so you know, when the day you get out of service, go to your reserve recruiter and you can get in because now you're a free agent.
Hmm.
So the literally like it was July 1st of 2012. I waited until the day after the 4th of July, and I was there that first day that office was open. I'm like, hey, this is this. So I only had a short break in service. So July 1st was like my last day of active. And then August 22nd was my day back in the service. It took about 60 days to convert over. And then I went back in. And then what they had available was air transportation. Another 2 years of figuring out like you do what you got to do, but wait until you get to your dream and your destiny. And so I did that for 2 years, and then I became an education and training manager, and that's what I've been doing ever since for about 5 or 6 years.
Okay, so you've been doing that for 5, 6 years. Uh, transitioning to what you're doing now. Is that what kind of led you to, found Legrity Media? Like, can you tell the audience about that story? Like, where this idea, where did this idea come about?
Yeah, so it started back in 2010. I'm like, I wanted to teach the world better relationships, and mental health was a door to open that up. And then I found out that's not the door for me. So when I got out of the service, I tried to go over and start another company called Perspectives and Reflections. It was teaching the world better relationships, and it was going to churches, helping them with their marriages and whatnot, being a consultant, because a lot of churches get caught up in marriage counseling, but they don't have consultants dealing with the here and now. And I tried to hard charge in combat boots and khaki pants and a button down shirt to about 250 churches in about a 60-day period, either on the phone or in person or virtual and everything else. And I ran out of money and I almost went homeless. So I had to recoup and reboot. And I had about 70 different career paths between 2012 and 2019 because of just trying to figure out how to make this quote unquote transition, which I don't believe in transition. It's a transformation. And I did multiple different things. And then I got into wherever I could, I just tried to still recreate the brand of Perspectives and Reflections, but it didn't pan out. And in about 5 years of doing a bunch of different things, including radio and teaching across the nation through speaking companies and training companies, in 2017, I broke my back. So not only did I almost go homeless a couple times in that 7 year transition, I literally broke my back, my L4, my L5, and my S1 just totally disrupted, totally out in the hospital for 2 days and had to learn how to walk.
What happened to your back? What led
So
to
I
that?
already I already had chronic back problems because of all the military stuff we go over and do. It's like, hey, go haul this stuff, go do this, go get on aircraft and move this, go move these pallets, go move these things. And I had chronic back pain, and it was already documented with the VA. But it was like every month when I got my disability check, and it was 40% at the time, I was like, I made the joke. I'm like, yeah, my VA senses are tingling. I'm getting paid. So I would hurt for a couple of days and then be fine. So I was on annual tour at the time, and I'm like, oh, it's the hurt of the month. It's towards the end of the month / beginning of the month. My VA senses are tingling. I'll be fine. A couple of days will go by and then it'll subside. And my wife's like, what are we going to do next? You have this AT and you have nothing else lined up. It's like the jobs you keep getting are either seasonal or something or whatever. And I said, well, the Lord is my witness. I said, I'm going to fight for this marriage and fight for this family. That's all I can say right now. I'm just going to continue to grind. Well, my back like went out in the parking lot that day. I went from like a 4 pain level to an 8, almost dropped on the concrete. I asked the Lord for strength. I crawled pretty basically to my car and drove that 45 minutes to get to work. I got out of the car again and it was spiked up back to an 8. And then I'm like, all right, I got to army crawl into work. So I'm halfway army crawling into the building and I realize I'm like, it's 2017. I have a phone. Why am I doing this to myself? And I work in a medical squadron. When you're in pain, you don't think straight.
Right.
So halfway through, I'm like, I dropped my bag. I'm in the crawling position. I said, hey, chief, it's like, I'm outside the door and I'm crawling right now. I'm in an immense amount of pain. She came out. Her and another guy tried to do the fireman carry on me. It hurt too much. I said, take my bags. I'm going to army crawl the rest of the way in. Just take my stuff so I have less weight. So I army crawl the rest in. And I'm in a medical squadron at the time. So everybody's trying to evaluate me. It took like an hour and a half for like the fire department to come in and take me to the ED and everything else. So everybody's asking the same question. What happened? I'm like, can I get a microphone, please? I'm like, I've already told 30 people. So I got in the hospital for those 2 days, and it was God's providence in that sense, because at that time I had no work. And because I broke my back on active orders, they put me on a medical contingency order to see what happened. So it took me 3 months to fully recover. Well, not 100% recover, but enough to walk and
Yeah.
enough to somewhat run. So that's what happened. But that day when I was in the hospital, someone from my church came over, and they knew my struggles on like entrepreneurship and overall work and flow. And he just basically said, you need to go give up the military. You need to go give up everything you need to do. You need to start a $10 to $50 job and just start all over again. I was so infuriated. I wanted to get up, but I couldn't because I was broken. But that gave me enough motivation. I'm like, I need to really pursue my calling to help military veterans and first responders transform, because I was wrestling with that at that time. I was trying to do business and everything else. I'm like, should I go to the civilian population because it's a bigger population to help them with their dreams and destiny? Or do I really focus narrow and deep and work with the military veterans and first responders? I hated that conversation, but I actually love that conversation now because it made me do my calling. And that's how our show War Hero to Superhero came out. That's eventually how Legrity came out. That's how this other military opportunity came out. And all the other people I get to help is because of that moment of saying, like, I don't care if there's only 22 million. I'd rather help out the 22 million that I want to serve than to go over and help out the 200 million, because I can still help civilians. It's just that we are a community that needs to be lifted up, and when we go and get lifted up, we do amazing things, and then we really influence the community. So we will go over and become from that war hero to superhero. So that's pretty much my transformation story from that. And now it's been 4 years of just figuring out how to get to that next step from there to make it go from part-time to full-time.
So 2017 was when this happened, and you had this. You mentioned that you don't believe in transition, only in transformation.
Mm-hmm.
So can you tell our audience a little bit about like how are you helping our community in their transformation?
So we do two things. So the main company now that I have for myself, and Legrity is the bigger company, but War Hero to Superhero through podcasting and digital television gets the message out there for their transformation from the bedroom to the boardroom. We tend to fix it backwards when we get out of the service. Like, let's go get a career and then burn ourselves from both ends. And hopefully enough money comes over to free us up from time to have more living room, family time, bedroom, intimacy time together. We do it backwards. We need to go over and outpour into the bedroom and really get that relationship right. And then from there, pour into the living room. And then as both those relationships are overpouring, now you have the freedom to go over and the support to then go into the boardroom to really become successful. So we do the podcast throughout the week, and then we take that message and amplify it to a digital TV show under Legrity Media. And that's how we get the voice out there, because my goal is to get our voices loud so then we can really make transformation, really make change, because transition means you're going back. We already are veterans. We don't go back. It's kind of like if you got married and you got divorced, you're never going to say, I never got married unless you annulled it. But typically, if you have kids, the same thing. You don't go over and say, I'm going to unfather myself or unmother myself. We've already made that transformation. We've already made that change. We became that war hero. Now we're transforming into that superhero. So I leverage that in the sense of content. And then from content, then I go over and now I can deliver a space through Legrity to then get your content amplified, because the goal is to transform those military veterans and first responders, because they've already served and they have another mission. Now it's my heart and my job is to get that mission out there, either to help you craft it or to go over and amplify it.
And you said to the podcast throughout the week, you guys do that like 5 times a week, and then you
We did
transform
it.
that into
We
digital TV.
We did that up to 5 episodes a week. One time I was doing 6 like social media lives and podcasts a day. I was going to each platform. I've really curtailed now. And what I use social media as a benchmark to go over and to vet and to start getting the voice out there for the message and also for those veterans and first responders. And then from there, let's say I interviewed you on my show that week, and then I gave you a challenge to say is get the X amount of views in X amount of days. Everybody gets that challenge for that week, and whoever gets the most views gets that free interview on War Hero to Superhero. So then you get amplified to Legrity, which is distributed out to 323 million homes on our set-top devices and connected devices. And then through the internet, you're in 213 countries and about 4.1 billion reach. So I want to really get that up and started to go over and do that. And I've been doing that I did it with a prior network about a year ago, but I really wanted to do it on our own so we can really amplify the voice and know what structure to go and do that. So that's what we go over and do. And we also teach people to do that. So if you're already doing podcasting, we want to complement your podcast and amplify it to a digital TV show.
So how many, you still being in service, how many, employees or personnel do you have working with you with this?
So right now with Legrity, we have 5. So it's myself as the director of IT. Sonia Clark does international business and marketing. Queen Kimmy, she's another veteran. She goes over and does the director of online marketing because online marketing and marketing is drastically different. We also have Allie Stark out of Arizona. She goes over and she covers more of the sales and then also the organic reach. So she does the more about the networking. And then trying to remember the last person, Leslie Klein, she goes over and is the director of operations and logistics. And as we grow, we want to then go hire more. So each of those 5 directors would then have people under.
Right.
So right now we're doing all the arms and legs and go over and pulling. And as we go over and grow, we have our business plans to say, hey, when it reaches X, then we can hire more people. Our goal is 120,000 shows within 5 to 10 years. So our goal is to be a 9-figure business going over and having people earning between, those shows earning between 5 to 7-figure incomes, those show content creators. And then also people that are on our staff, we want to go train them really well, just like the military. Hey, if you're faithful, available, teachable, and a servant, hey, then we can train you. You don't have to go have all the skill sets because you can learn anything. Especially, I've been a training manager for 6 years. I've been teaching for decades. It's like, as long as you have those 4 characteristics, then you're going to be moldable in that particular regard. There's no limits on training somebody. Yeah, the time might be different. You might have a natural gifting to pick it up faster. But at the end of the day, if you have a passion about it, you're going to figure it out. That's what entrepreneurism is. Right. So we want to do that same mindset with Legrity.
And, since starting this, what are some of your guys' challenges and, what have been some of the most rewarding experiences you guys have had since starting Legrity Media?
The challenge is that you have 5 different unique personality styles coming from all around the world. Sonia comes from Australia. Leslie comes from North Carolina and has no military background. 2 of us are veterans. One's Army, one's Air Force, kind of learning how to play with that. And then we have, who's the other person? I'm trying to remember them all. Sorry, Queen Kimmy is the military. Leslie is from North Carolina. Then we have Allie, which is coming from Arizona and has done more entrepreneurialism and more social media networking. So it's learning those dynamics and how to go serve in love and not go over and just serve out of our natural style. We have to learn to go over to business. So that's been one of the most challenging things. One of the most rewarding things is that we got to 5-figure in a business in less than 60 days. From inception of April 18th, and it was roughly about June 1st, we already were 5-figure. And if we keep going on track, we'll be 6-figure by as a business in 120 days. And if projections go to where we're going, I'd say in a year or 2, we could be at 7-figure. And the great part is we keep the costs low, but we're able to bring the content high. And then we can also bring in other funnels in to maximize it, because we're disrupting the community by how we do it. You get to be on digital television and you get to make the profit. So if you have a show or the listener has a show, all their 25 minutes or an hour or whatever, how long they choose their show for, you get to be the person be the producer in a sense. And if you want those commercials inside, you keep 100% of the revenue. So if Sears and Roebuck called you, which is really old school, or Facebook wanted to put an ad in there, and then you get to keep that revenue while we empower you. Now we put some ads on the front end and the back end of your show, but that in between time is your time. So that's the most beautiful thing. And that's been the most wonderful thing, is like, how did we go over and go from concept idea to 5-figure in those 60 days. So we want to figure out how we replicated that and then to share that out to the community also.
That's awesome. That's interesting to hear. And, just curious, how did you all connect with each other, and where did that name, Legrity, how did that come about?
Yeah, so about a year and a half ago, one of the veterans, I'm not sure if you're following her, Megan Fenyo, was on digital television, and I'm always an advocate to go over and to connect and to network and whatnot. And she put a big picture, and she's like, "Look at me, I'm on TV," and I'm like, "How did you go over and do that?" I've done radio before, I've done social media, I've done Facebook Lives, I've done podcasting, I've done all these things, but digital TV, I was like, "What's this?" So I got with her and then got connected with a prior network. Well, as we were working with the network, we just started seeing the values of legacy, integrity, and global community not fitting in there. Like Megan Fenyo is awesome, but the network I was connected with didn't have these values. So as we were all connected together, a bunch of us were working on developing their network. And we were like, we just kept seeing these things that weren't there. So at the end of the day, we're like, all right, we're just going to do this on our own. And the funny part is that we had all the skill sets and we didn't know that we had them. But once we said, hey, we were going to execute this on April 18th, we literally owned the space and the distribution in broadband within like 15 days. We had clients sign on in less than 30 days. We were at 5-figure in less than 60 days. So and those values came out. We did this awesome test on figuring out what are core values of everybody. So each of us did it, and we had this long list of core values, and we kept seeing legacy, integrity, global community. Those are the three things out of all 5 founders.
Mm.
And legacy, integrity, we merged it together. We went to this great website. If I'll get my international marketer to send you the website, it's really cool if you're trying to brand names, and you can just take it and merge it together. And it came up in this thing, and it said Legrity. And then we obviously, you do the search in the back and see if somebody has a name and everything else in the domain space. And once it was like, this really fits, and it goes over, and we want to infuse legacy and integrity, not just go for a moment. And then also that global community that we wanted to grow and brand as we have partners that are overseas too, because that's not there. We don't have a global community that really broadcasts out. We have these little cliques that do these things in these little funnels, but no one's really looking towards that global community. So that's where Legrity was born out of.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So for those of you guys just joining in, talking to Daniel Faust of Legrity Media, talking about, the Legrity Media. How do you guys, Daniel, find sponsors? How do you guys connect with sponsors for the digital TV?
So we do it 2 sides. So for the content creator or producer that comes over and joins, we have a learning resource center to teach you how to go get those sponsors, to get that product placement, to go get that swag and everything else. So we have a whole entire learning resource center that's valued at roughly $30,000, because all the people we had in there, like me from the IT side, and then we also had someone that's done international business and taken people from 0 to 15 million. We've taken all that knowledge and wisdom and put that in the learning resource center. So when somebody signs up to go over and do that. But additionally, right now we are going over and we're doing AVOD. So we went through a third party to get that hooked up, but we're also looking at doing that ourselves to add AVOD. So those small time people can come to us and put the ads in there. So we insert them digitally before and after the show. So for your show, if you have a show, then, or anybody that's listeners, we teach you how to go put those ads in there once you get sponsorship. We have templates and swipe files that you can have to go over and to work with. If you want to charge your guest, you can go charge your guest if you want. I personally don't, because I really want the veteran, military, first responder community to grow. So I'm willing to take the hit and not charge. But the individual content creator, if they want to do that and to say, hey, I have a small coffee shop in there, we teach that in the Learning Resource Center too. So you can leverage that power to go over and do that. Because most people, once you have the reach and the metrics and the numbers, people are going to want that space and to want to have that voice. And if you do it organically throughout the show, either through a digital commercial or through a shout out or anything else, that's going to really captivate the audience in there, especially if you like wearing something or a product. So we do it both ways in that regard. Long term, we want to then go over and add those elements and other things that we have planning for. We have a lot of 21st, 22nd century planning that we want to do with Legrity to take your content to the next level. So there's multiple different ways. We have banners also that we can put in there. We have multiple different ways to help you go over and advertise as a sponsor that wants to be with us, or as a content creator that wants sponsors inside their show.
And for anybody that's listening, who are you all looking for as far as like bringing into Legrity Media? Does it's mainly sponsors or content creators? Like how does that work as far as like if anybody listening right now is interested and wanting to learn more about Legrity Media?
We're looking for both. We're at our soft launch right now. We have about 5 or 6 shows that are on the platform, on the 12 to 15 locations that we're broadcast at. We're on Apple, we're on Roku, we're on Amazon, we're finishing up Samsung, LG, and Philips. We're already on the web. We're already on most of the tablet devices, iOS, Android. So we're looking for both types. Is that content creators that really have a positive message with a global community? It's got to be TV 14 and below. So if you have content that's more TV, MA, or R in that regard, unfortunately, this might not be the best place for you. But if you're wanting positive content, TV 14 and below, I know people ask all the time, can we cuss? We kind of do a reverse thing or bleep it out in that particular regard. We only allow a couple cusses because it's, again, TV 14 and below. But if you have really raw content, then it'd be best to go to another provider. But long story short, we're looking for both sides as content creators and sponsors, and we can work and tailor to those plans, because we even have live interactive video technology now, so you can go over and bring your audience in, and then there's new ways that we can help you go over and sponsor your stuff also, like in summits and other things. So we have a multitude of clients that we go over and look for. And the best part is, if you're just a watcher of the stuff, it's 100% free right now. So you can just go watch the content. We put those commercials in there so you don't have to go over and pay. So when you see a lot of these other streaming content and you're paying that, you're basically paying for the cost to go over and to not get those commercials in. We'll eventually go towards that model, but it'll be a free and then like a little bit of pay if you don't want the commercials in there. But we try to do limited commercials as much as possible. But we know most of the world rather have free. So we're like, hey, we put the commercials in.
So anybody right now, you mentioned those platforms, they can go on, get the app. You guys have an app.
Yeah.
You guys can go on Roku, Amazon. What are some other platforms you mentioned?
So you can go to Apple, you can go to Roku, you can go over and go to Amazon, you can go to your Samsung tablet, you can go to your iPhone, you can go to your Droid phone and whatnot. Again, we're new and we're launching, so we don't have as much content as other apps, but that's the reason why, is we're looking for those people. So if we had to choose our person right now, in our 3-month to 6-month plan and goal is to get as many content creators as possible. If you're ready to do sponsorship in that regard, it is a blue ocean. It is new. We will get there. But if you want to look at the long picture of that, if you're a sponsor. Right. So, but that's for right now, is that once we get to 20 shows, that's when we go over and do our hard launch, our PR campaigns. That's when we actively start looking for sponsors and whatnot, because then we have the metrics, the background, and the content to go over and to give you a platform as a sponsor, so you really get the reach that you're looking for.
Awesome. So Daniel, our audience members, what actionable step can you give them right now to take in pursuit of their second service?
My second service took me a long time to go over and to build. So I would say, if you're transforming out and you're going into your second service in that regard, you got to figure out your zone. It's a really awesome book. It's CHAZOWN. It's a Hebrew word. That's the reason why I'm spelling it. CHAZOWN. It basically takes your past, your gifts and your talents and your capabilities, and combines it together to go over and to find out what your dream and your destiny is. It comes from a Christian perspective, but you can glean a lot of wisdom from it, even if you're not a Christian, from there, because it helps you go over and find where the next direction that you want to go. And that was huge for me. Like, I knew where I wanted to go. And yes, the back breaking was the real catalyst to push. But when I was working through that book and working through my past, I know the reason why I went through my past. I know parents' divorce, brother's death, and even sexual molestation. Those 3 things happened to me. Going over in that, plus the military, shaped who I was. Did I want to go through those bad things? No. But what can I use those bad things to transform for good things in that regard? So that was a real helpful model and book to walk through and really figure out who I want to be. So I would challenge that to anybody. Now, if you're not wanting to look at Christian concepts, you can use strength finders, you can use a disc model behavior, or get with a consultant to go over and help you walk through those steps. Chris Hoffman's also a great resource that goes over and consults veterans in that transformation also. So whoever you need to go and find, either us through War Hero Superhero, a book, but just actively work your process out and don't go over and wait, because the military will just literally gone.
Right.
It was 60 days, I think, after I left, and I made a phone call and people didn't even remember who I was. And I trained them to do their job. Literally, it can go. And it's nothing bad of them or ill or anything else, but we get so caught up in the mission that unless we have an intimate relationship with that person, it's just more like, hey, it's a transaction. It's not a process. So that's why I think our veteran community is so huge. And that's why I support it, because once we get out, then we really realize those tight bonds and we want to go over and infuse that. So I would say that.
I appreciate you for sharing that, Daniel. And yeah, you're right. I mean, like the military, yes, it is a very big part of our lives, but it's not our life, right? Like there's so many other things. And I've never heard of that the book. And you mentioned it was Shazone.
The Zone. So CHAZOWN. So if anybody forgets the name of the book, they can just direct message me on like Facebook or any of the social medias and ask. I'm pretty open and I'm watching that stuff on a daily basis. So
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Daniel, before we go into our second segment of our podcast, what's one thing you want our listeners to take away from this episode?
don't go over and wait to be perfect. Again, I did radio for $70 a week and I only got 5 listeners. I jumped on social media and was doing 6 different platforms 6 times a day and whatnot. You do something and you go one step further. So more the conscientious veteran, the more sweet veterans tend to want to do everything perfect and they don't want to disappoint. Just go out there and do it and then learn that one lesson each and every day and go step forwards, because Mr. Beast on YouTube goes over and he's at 65 million. If you look at him 9 years ago in the sense of YouTube, he wasn't there. And we all get there just by going over and going out there and trying, and then learning from one thing that we did that we could do better the next day. And that's the reason why Legrity Media was born, is I just kept going. I'm like, and even it's like, okay, radio didn't work out for me. All right, I'll go towards this direction. Or, hey, this is working out. How do I amplify that? And anything else. I became successful because of the Lord gracing me, perseverance, and then also going over and keep trying that little bit. So don't be scared. And the cool part with us, with Legrity, you're not alone. There's a whole entire community that's going to help you grow, and you're not going to be left behind.
Yeah, I think that's important. It's a simple reminder. We don't just go straight, from this, being a civilian to our first duty station or deployment, right? You have to go through these basic training. You have to learn like the basic things, in whatever you're doing, to be successful in the long term. And it's those little things, those basic things that you have to master to be successful later on in your future. All right, Daniel. So going into our second segment here, this is what I call the Fast Five. Same 5 questions I ask all my guests. So Daniel, first question is, what's one hobby you enjoy?
VR games.
Anything in particular?
Games that are more community based, like there's Chess Club, there's Demino, Star Trek Bridge Crew. I really like. So if anybody plays those games, they can meet me on there. I've been trying to look for that. Timing is so. If you're a VR player, I'd love to go over and play. And if you want to glean off my brain, you can do that at the same time.
All right. Next question: if you had to choose one person to hang out with for one day, who would it be and why?
Martin Luther. I really wanted to see how he mastered going through trial and joy. He threw himself in thickets. He had to go deal with the persecution. He's the one that helped the Bible go over and get where it was at and stuff like that. And a whole entire like Lutheran church. I really am interested in going over and reading more about his stuff. But if he was alive, yeah, I'd be like, hey, how did you go over and do it?
Next question. Recommend a book for our audience to read. I think you mentioned this already.
Yeah, I'll go back to Chazone, CHAZOWN. It's a fantastic book. It's one of the major ones that transformed my life.
Okay. Next question. What's your favorite quote and why?
I think it was it's about fast and not thorough is not worth it. I'm summarizing real quick. And it's actually something I say to my kids all the time because the generations tend to go faster, but not doing things thorough. And if you don't, then it doesn't succeed. And if you're more like my personality style, and my kids are very similar, we tend to go fast, but we don't do it thorough. And I'm like, why am I doing it over and over again? How about you just do it fast and thorough?
Hmm. That's a great point. Great lesson for the generation that we our generation right now.
Mhm.
Uh, One final question, Daniel. Where do you see yourself in a year, 5 years, or even 10 years from now?
A year from now, doing full time with Legrity and growing War Hero to Superhero as a brand, I would love to make it a channel. I mean, we already have the IT capabilities to make it a linear channel and VOD. 5 years from now, I want to go over and to be at the point that our business is 8-figure at Legrity.
Hmm.
War Hero Superhero has a huge movement and 10,000 marriages transformed and 1,000 veterans lives transformed either through consulting through our company and other resources. In 10 years from now, I want to go rewrite the script on certain things. I would love to go over and lobby for, figuring out real strategies with the veteran homelessness and veteran suicide and things of that nature, and really giving people purpose. Because when you have purpose and belonging, that was the one thing I really learned in mental health those 2 years. You have purpose and belonging and you have a mission, you have no reason to go over and commit suicide. People have told me, like, you should be dead by all the trials you're going through. I didn't even go through all the ones I have. I'm just giving a quick snapshot. But I even had a coworker try to shoot 12 people while I was at the job.
Hmm.
Crazy. Yep. So it's like those types of things is that, but when you have that purpose, your belonging and your mission, no matter what trial you go through, you thrive. And I would love to go over and to crack that nut to help more veterans to do that and not just do a service to do a service, really do a transformational service in their lives.
I love it, man. I love that the goal and the vision that you have. 5, 10 years from now, and and trying to give back to our community. Well, not just to our community, right, but just to people in general. Just trying to give back. Um, Daniel, thank you for being here on the podcast. Thank you for sharing your story with us, and talking about Legrity Media. How can our audience members, how can they stay in touch with you?
Two easiest ways is they can find Daniel Faust on any social media through War Hero to Superhero. The two biggest ones is Facebook and IG. War Hero to Superhero on Facebook, The Real War Hero to Superhero on IG. Someone took my name. I had to take it back. That's what happens in this world. And then if you want to go know more about Legrity, you can Facebook, IG, and LinkedIn is our tightest social media. So Facebook, IG, and LinkedIn for Legrity, Legrity. But again, if you ever get lost, just look for Daniel Faust and I will navigate you the rest of the way. I mean, if you're not writing it down, 92% is going to get forgotten. So I understand that. So just get back and like, you mentioned something in the podcast, or, hey, where is the network that you're with? I'll just connect you back. So the best way is just to find Daniel Faust.
And we'll make sure put a link on those in the show notes. Make sure you guys find those pages. Daniel, again, thank you for sharing your story, man. I appreciate you for coming on, and hopefully I'll talk to you soon, man.
Yeah, thank you for your time too. Have a good day.
All right, take care.